Thank you, Ms. Mandrocavallo. And thank you to all the guests so far. As you noticed, probably we're running a few minutes late, so we'll try and catch up with the program. Before we delve into the details of our conference, allow me to review 5 housekeeping points really quickly. For all the virtual participants, please remember to be on mute if you're not speaking. For all the guests in the room, remember to turn off your phones or put them on silent. As you probably noticed, we're in Quebec, so some of our guests will be speaking to us in French, and if you don't have an audio translation system, they're available at the entrance. This is also available online should you wish to. You just need to click the button for simultaneous translation. Lastly, we have a full agenda full of many speakers, so I would ask our guests to please try and respect the time allotted. But without further ado, I would kick off this 2022 conference. So, our first topic today deals with the importance of partnerships and collaborations to address the issues surrounding cybersecurity. Rich nations are particularly susceptible to attacks, and the private and public sectors must work together to find ways to address these, as we've heard from our initial guests. In the next hour, we will welcome 3 speakers who will present their perspectives on these issues. I would ask our panelists to make their way to the stage as I introduce them. First, representing Italy is Professor Roberto Baldoni, Director General of the Agenzia per la Cybersicurezza Nazionale. Created in 2021, the agency is responsible for the oversight of all operations pertaining to cybersecurity, including the development of cybersecurity technologies. Next, representing Canada, is Sami Khoury. Mr. Khoury is the head of the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity. The Cybersecurity Centre provides expert advice, guidance, and support for critical infrastructure owned by the public or private sectors. And representing Quebec is Monsieur Steve Waterhouse, Assistant Deputy Minister for Information Security and Cybersecurity in the newly created Ministère de la Cybersécurité et du Numérique. Guiding the discussion is Marie-Claude Lavallée, former journalist with Radio Canada and radio personality at Le Québec Maintenant.
Thank you, Enrico. Thank you very much. Bonjour a tous, buongiorno a tutti. Quanto mi fa piacere essere con voi oggi per discutere di questo argomento tanto importante, importantissimo, la cybersicurezza. C'est avec plaisir que j'ai accepté d'animer votre panel sur la cybersécurité. Cybersecurity is a subject we can no longer avoid. We all have to think about it and to act to protect our systems. We live in a fantastically connected world, but that interconnection has its threats, its dangers. Where does the threat come from? And what can governments do to prevent it? What can you do to prevent it? And how can government and private sector unite their efforts to counter cyber attacks? This is what this panel is all about. So, I will begin right away. Now you know my 3 wonderful guests. I will move this chair just a little bit. I will start with the very simple and basic question, a crucial question, I must say. Je vais la faire en français. Premièrement, qui est à risque d'une cyberattaque? Et je vais demander à Steve Waterhouse de répondre à cette question. À noter qu'il y aura d'autres questions pour mes 2 autres invités. Réponse individuelle plus tard. Steve.
Alors, bon matin à tous et à toutes. C'est simple. De plus en plus, nous avons l'obligation de travailler avec de l'automatisation, donc des systèmes informatisés dans nos vies et au travail spécifiquement. Et nous avons, à ce moment-là, on se fait se demander de toujours faire nos transactions électroniques. Donc, la transformation numérique est vraiment un gage de travail à tous les jours. Ceci dit, tout autant qu'on veut faciliter notre travail au quotidien avec ces moyens électroniques, mais aussi le cybercrime profite aussi des faiblesses technologiques et aussi souvent des mauvaises pratiques qui sont mises en place que les gens aussi oublient. Et on entend parler souvent du terme de cyberhygiène et ça devient à ce moment-là une responsabilité personnelle de toujours s'y préparer et de s'assurer qu'on travaille avec les meilleurs moyens et avec les meilleures pratiques.
Excellent. Tell me now, all 3 of you, about the concrete measures your government is taking at the moment to combat what I call this pandemic of hacking, if I may use the word, and we're tired of this word. How does your government's work with the private sector? Because we know that these are very different ways of functioning. Let's start with Monsieur Baldoni.
So, bonjour, Marie-Claude.
Bonjour.
So, actually, the government started working in this direction in 2013, so many years ago. And very recently, we published a specific cybersecurity strategy of Italy, which is particular in the sense that it gives 82 very clear action that the government has to do in order to make our country more safer with respect to the threat that we have in front of us. And of course, these are not only, technological defense or technological action. They have to deal with education, awareness, public-private partnership, because there is nothing that we can do in this world alone as government. We really need, and I think that the Ukrainian crisis also showed that very clearly, we have to work with the private sector in all the action that we do. So public-private partnership, having an holistic approach of what there is in front of us, because at the end of the day, what we are passing through at the moment is a kind of cultural shift. So, and as such, we have to deal with it.
Same question to Canada. What does Canada do to counter this pandemic of hacking?
I would say, in order to combat cybersecurity, we need to understand what the threat is all about. And to understand the threat, the Cyber Center or the Leading Center for Cybersecurity, but I'll refer to it as the Cyber Center in Court. The Cyber Center does a lot of work. To understand, to be able to combat.
It's the same.
It's a cybersecurity issue.
Are we hacked?
Yeah. Maybe now it's a bit better. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
So, in order to combat the pandemic of cybersecurity challenges that we have, we need to understand what the threat is. And at the Cyber Center, we spend a lot of time analyzing what is the threat landscape that's out there and publish. So far, we're on our 3rd edition of the National Cyber Threat Assessment. It's a document here. We published it on our website 2 weeks ago. It was launched. This is what Canada would face in the next 2 years as the cyber threat in order to muster enough energy and combat it together. So some of the threats are against government, so from foreign nation states. Some of the threats are against businesses or against Canadian citizens, so such as cybercrime. And we need to be prepared to combat both sides with enough energy. But it starts by talking to Canadian. And I have no doubt that the threats that we outline in this document are the same threats that Professor Baldoni is also. If there was an Italian edition, it would be roughly the same.
We are all in this together.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes, the whole planet is connected, therefore. Steve Waterhouse, que fait le gouvernement du Québec pour contrer cette pandémie de hacking?
Alors, depuis le 1er janvier, le gouvernement du Québec a mis sur pied le ministère de la Cybersécurité et du Numérique avec à sa tête, comme vous allez voir ce midi, le Ministère, qui est donc un ministre dédié à la cybersécurité et à la transformation numérique. Ce qui fait en sorte qu'on est la première province au Canada à avoir une gouvernance en ce sens. Et aussi, dans le monde, très peu de gouvernances ont reflété l'importance de mettre en avant-plan un ministère, donc un ministre, une personne donc en titre pour être capable de prendre des décisions importantes lorsqu'il est question de cybersécurité. Donc, ceci est un gage de leadership envers surtout l'entreprise privée pour être en mesure de dire cesser de faire de responsabilité de la cybersécurité un 3e, 4e, 5e chapeau de responsabilité, mais bien que ça soit à la table des décideurs un enjeu de premier ordre tout autant que la finance ou la direction stratégique de l'organisation. Si ceci est appliqué partout uniformément, ça va déjà aider tous les agences à pouvoir faire face à cette menace-là de manière uniforme, comme les collègues le font.
And why, hearing everything that you are doing specifically, why do we still have the impression that hackers are always ahead of the game? And what can we do to turn that around? I will start with Monsieur Khoury.
I would characterize it slightly differently. I think we don't hear of all the times when we block an incident. Success often doesn't catch a headline. We don't see a headline in the paper saying we stopped a cyber attack. Every day, the government of Canada, when we defend the government, we stop between 5 and 7 billion attacks against the government. So we don't make the headlines with that. What makes the headline is the fact that a certain business got ransomware. So unfortunately, we need to change the narrative around this, and we need to talk more about the problem. October was Cybersecurity Awareness Month, but I would argue every day should be Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We need to talk about it all the time. We need to talk about it at home. We need to talk about it with our family members. So we need to make it such that it becomes part of the vocabulary so that we don't talk necessarily about the incidents, but all about how we're making society a bit safer.
Comment faire, Monsieur Waterhouse, pour justement contrer ceux qui donnent l'impression qu'ils sont toujours en avant de ce que font les gouvernements pour protéger la population?
La première étape, c'est d'en prendre connaissance. Comme dit Sami, là, si on ne connaît pas la menace là, qui est autour de nous, si on ne connaît pas les acteurs de menace, je devrais dire, ça va faire en sorte qu'on ne saura pas quelles sont nos vulnérabilités, tout autant qu'on ne saura pas faire cette saine gestion du risque au quotidien. Ceci dit, il s'agit de prendre connaissance de tous ces éléments-là et après ça, d'en faire l'éducation. Comme dit Sami, ça commence même à la maison, un peu comme tous et chacun, nos parents nous ont montré les bonnes séances, comment traverser la rue pour ne pas se faire frapper, regarder des deux côtés. Donc, dans le cyberespace, c'est un peu la même allusion qu'il faut faire. Donc, démontrer à notre entourage, pas autant les enfants, mais aussi nos parents, qui, eux, arrivent avec la nouvelle technologie et qui sont émerveillés de découvrir maintes et maintes ressources, mais qui ne sont pas à l'affût de qu'est-ce qu'elles sont les menaces qui viennent avec l'utilisation de ces ressources-là. Alors, c'est tout vous voyez, ça touche à tous les aspects de la société et ça revient à faire cette sensibilisation auprès de tous et chacun.
Et quelle est l'attitude, what's the attitude in Italy to try to be ahead of the criminals?
D'abord, je suis tout à fait d'accord avec les deux collègues. I want to add something. So people has to realize, the citizen has to realize, citizen, CEO of big companies, director of public administration institutes, they have to realize that cybersecurity cannot be delegated. So it's not the fact that in Italy we build this agency, the Cybersecurity Agency, that Canada has the Canadian Center that is able to face the threat. So actually, every one of us has to apply to its own level the basic rules of cyber hygiene. Then, when everyone will do that, theoretically, there will be probably no need anymore of me and Sami, but this unfortunately is not the case now and probably not will be for many, many years. So what do we do for...
particularly when we know what's coming technologically also.
Yes, absolutely. What is the real, in my view, advantage of having such a center? The fact that people can go there and look at the rules that they have to obey. Because technology change, the way the attacker accomplish their task change. So the role of our center is to publish book like this one, where we explain how you can defend from the attacks. So one very important point is sharing information at the international level very quickly, in order that once that we see an attack coming, we are able with our center to come up with rules that have to be used through the nation, everyone at its own level. Maybe CEO have to do something more, of course, than citizen has to do. But the basic idea, again, is cybersecurity cannot be delegated. Anyone has to do its own task inside that. It's a cultural shift.
Indeed, indeed. Now let's talk a little bit about télétravail, work from home, or as they say in Italy, smart work. I love that expression, smart work. It has
Because
changed.
the work that we do in office is not smart.
So that also has changed radically the way we use the systems and how now a big company, let's say, has to work with people who have either their own computers and then share things that maybe the company does. What do we, how has that changed everything? Teleworking in terms of cybersecurity. Tout d'abord, Monsieur Waterhouse, ensuite Monsieur Baldoni et ensuite Monsieur Khoury.
Ça a changé beaucoup de choses, Marie-Claude, et en premier lieu, ça a été la prise de conscience comment la chaîne d'approvisionnement, elle est sensible. Alors qu'il y a eu un problème dans l'immédiat, il fallait donc aller chercher des portables, il fallait aller chercher donc des téléphones cellulaires et tout, et il y a eu un drainage sur le marché, et encore aujourd'hui, il y a de la difficulté à aller négocier et avoir le matériel nécessaire pour continuer. Cependant, à l'institution, donc dans les compagnies et au gouvernement, cela a créé justement un déploiement de mesures quand même sans précédent pour être en mesure d'accommoder tous ces télétravailleurs-là. Et ça a donné justement l'éveil qu'il fallait donc ajuster la cybersécurité en conséquence. Heureusement, on n'a pas eu beaucoup de documentation de cas anticipés, vraiment, de cyberattaques envers les télétravailleurs. Par contre, ça a été le travail ardu des équipes en arrière pour être en mesure de prévenir ces incidents-là et ensuite en faire toujours le maintien et l'éducation des gens. Au gouvernement du Québec, on a le Centre gouvernemental de cyberdéfense qui veille à ce que tous les fonctionnaires de tous les ministères, les 305 ministères et organismes sous ma responsabilité, qui, à ce moment-là, veillent au jour le jour qu'il n'y ait pas d'effet négatif dans l'utilisation quotidienne du télétravail.
Monsieur Baldoni, Smart Work and Cybersecurity.
So actually, that was a big change because we experience a lot of attacks after that we start using this way of working. This is due to the fact that very quickly enterprises and government had to reformulate their way of working, and so services have been put outside of the firewall, and then they were much more weak to defend. If this operation was not done properly, technically speaking, actually this opened the field to many vulnerabilities that were exploited by hackers. And we had many incidents in Italy that report exactly to this point. Of course, this comes back to the hygiene that people need to have when use some laptop at home that belongs maybe to the company. So special rule have to be followed, because otherwise it's very easy for an attacker to get through the laptop of the employee and then through some VPN get into the network of the company. But again, this is a cultural change. I mean, when you cross the streets, what do? You look at left and right?
Absolutely. At least here in Canada. Do
so-
you do that as well
Yes.
in Italy?
So doing this, you
In Italy, it's eye contact.
But that is an algorithm that you are implementing, and you minimize the risk to be hit by a car. When you approach a computer, it has to be the same. You need to have an algorithm, automatic one, that you don't do any effort to do that. And then you start looking at, okay, I received this email from this guy. Yeah, this is a good reputation, so I can reply to him. I can read, I can open the PDF file. So this kind of behavior has to, percolate inside us. And we have to do this automatically, as when we cross the street, we look on left and right, because in this way we minimize the risk to be attacked by someone. And this has to be done, again, anyone at its own level. If you are a citizen, you have to obey some rule. If you are a general director, you have to obey some other rule. If you are a CTO, a CEO, then you have to do to implement other rules, more and more complex, of course.
Absolutely. And what about Canada with teleworking or working from home?
I think it's fair to say that the pandemic has changed the way we work. And for the government, it's a big shift. Pre-pandemic, the notion of me working from home was unimaginable. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, we started to adapt, and but it had to be done in a safe and secure way. So, as the professor mentioned, it's not just about connecting, extending the services of a business or extending the services to make them internet accessible, but it's to do it in a safe and secure way. So VPNs, multi-factor authentication, those are all techniques that we encourage people to use. There is a push on to bring your own device. Bring your own device can be done in a safe and secure way, but it's not trivial. So it has to be thought through as a way of enabling employees to use their own computers to work from home. And also for businesses that expose now that deal online, it's about making it safe and secure also. We've seen, from a government perspective, we've seen an enormous amount of impersonation of government website,
Yes.
And we had to take down about 13,000 websites in the last 2 years of people that are impersonating government services trying to collect information. So we're constantly monitoring, we're constantly watching. People are trying to take advantage of the remote posture. We saw nation states trying to exploit VPN connections. So there are an active effort underway to try to make the most of weaknesses in the work from home, and I think we have to stay one step ahead of it.
I will ask you one more question about, you just talked about some countries. Les delinquent countries, à quel point les pays délinquants sont une menace pour la sécurité du Canada, de l'Italie, la sécurité du Québec? Qu'est-ce qu'on fait en ce moment? Parce qu'on le voit bien, les pays délinquants sont là. Le Canada les nomme. J'imagine que l'Italie les nomme aussi. Alors, tout d'abord, M. Khoury.
Yeah, thanks. 2 years ago, we named for the first time publicly the 4 countries that are very challenging on the cybersecurity front, basically China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. And again, this year, in our National Cyber Threat Assessment, we named the 4 countries. They are both a strategic threat to the country. They are a threat against the government, but they're also a threat against businesses. And we've seen in some cases them stealing personal information, them stealing business information. You might think that there's nothing of interest, but when we sit in a room like that full of innovators, that is definitely of interest to some of these countries. And they won't hesitate to try to hack into your companies and try to steal your intellectual property and get ahead with an idea. So they are a real threat, but I'm sure we can work together to mitigate that threat.
Le Canada étant une province, non pas un pays, est-ce que le Canada est menacé autant par les pays délinquants comme ça?
On n'est pas à l'abri de quelques visites que ce soit et en collaboration avec Sami et son équipe, on prend connaissance évidemment de ces éléments de menace-là et oui, on se protège en conséquence et ça, c'est une protection technologique et non pas politique. Donc, lorsqu'on s'en va dans le cyberespace, il n'y a pas de distinction de frontières ou quoi que ce soit. Mais surtout, qu'est-ce qu'on a noté aussi et qu'on voit sur une base régulière, c'est les groupes de cybercriminels parrainés par des États-nations qui, eux, davantage se propagent à l'État, dans notre économie, en fait, et vont s'en prendre justement à des organisations et souvent sont vraiment à l'autre côté de la planète. Alors, ça vient toucher tous et chacun, citoyens comme petites, moyennes et grandes entreprises et aussi institutions publiques. Et de cette façon-là, en gardant l'information courante entre nos organisations, autrement dit, les échanges d'informations, notre perception que l'on a, parce que le Québec, d'ailleurs, a cette particularité de percevoir des menaces francophones, alors qu'ailleurs au Canada et ailleurs dans le monde, la majorité des attaques sont encore là de langue anglaise. Alors, de cette façon-là, on est peut-être à l'abri de quelques attaques, si on peut dire comme ça, mais aussi, il faut ne pas être aveugle sur le fait qu'il y en a quand même de la menace francophone qui est un peu partout. On connaît la francophonie qui est pareil un peu partout sur la planète. Donc, on est conscient et c'est comme ça qu'on fait ces échanges d'informations avec Ottawa dans ce domaine.
What about Italy?
So actually, we experienced, especially after February 24, many campaign of attacks from Russia, and of course, we are not, let's say, exempted from attacks coming from other actor states that also attack Canada and other developed countries. I think that it's a challenge that we have to accept in the sense that we have to fight against this. And in order to do that, we need really to push international collaboration, because the information that we need to cope with this threat, especially the attacks from state actors, are actually, let's say, distributed through several countries. So having information sharing proactive and timely, I think, is the only way that we have to better defend our countries. And don't forget an important point, this attack goes directly to undermine our economy. So that's why we really need to stay close together, because, of course, it's not written in any stone that we have to remain one of the more developed country in the world. And so that's why this is something that has to be defended, and these attacks is something that goes exactly in the direction of diminish our economy, diminish our importance and our innovation.
Exactly. I promised an individual question for both guests, since I had one for Steve at the beginning. This one is for Canada specifically. We talked about hackers, but what about the countries and people on the dark web, or who want to influence our way of thinking, our way of voting, influence our elections, influence our world? We never thought about that some years ago. I mean, now it's part of, I don't know about you, but when I look at future elections, it's like, what control do we have still? Le Canada fait quoi?
I think we got to first look at what misinformation and disinformation can do in the context of the US election a few years ago. But it is a real threat to our way of life, misinformation and disinformation. It's being industrialized constantly, second guessing what we read on Twitter, what we read in the news about somebody posting something. And certain countries, Russia is very famous for having industrialized misinformation campaign. We have to be extremely careful. So they are trying to influence our way of life. And actually, unfortunately, they are using, machine learning techniques to amplify the message. So yes, we are absolutely for innovation, but we have to be careful also that some of those technologies are not misused. We have put out some advice and guidance about how to spot or how to be smart about spotting misinformation and disinformation out there. And when it really touches the nerves, CSE, where I work, has declassified intelligence to prove that the Russians' messages have been wrong. So we will go to know, and if necessary, we'll go to declassify intelligence if necessary to prove that some of their misinformation campaigns are completely fabricated.
And
but it is definitely a real threat.
And it's very difficult because very often they will try to influence people who already have a tendency to think what what they want us to think or whatever, and then amplify that. Question specifically for Italy. We talk about the importance of that connection between state and private, sectors. We all know that they don't function the same way usually. Like what the state the workers think about the business workers and vice versa. How do you make the connection and how do you build the trust?
First of all, let me say that we don't have choice in this. So
that is very true.
We really need to work together in this holistic approach that I mentioned. We have several issues. Of course, one issue is to put together the information that we have on let's say, on the cyberspace in order to understand if there is some campaign running, but also we share other problems, the awareness problem, especially for the top management of companies that they don't believe maybe that this can happen to them, and so they don't take enough precaution with respect to the cyber threat. But we have also another huge issue that we share with all the Western countries, which is the education. So we don't have enough experts in cybersecurity, but not only, I would say, in cybersecurity, also in IT. And that is a big issue because, and we have to work with the private sector in order to increase the number of people of technicians, of people that look at the IT infrastructure and cyber security. I mean, the digital transformation has been so fast that university still produce the same number of engineers of 30 years ago, but at the same time, we don't have other experts. But we are actually changing all the sector from agriculture to the T of transportations. So actually, we really need to join effort and to invent things that can, fill this gap. In Italy, with 5 regions of Italy, and one was Emilia-Romagna, sign an agreement with the agency in order to create classes for post-high school student, 2 years class that at the end brings directly into a position in a company or in a public administration. So I think that this is a smart way to try to answer to this need. But still, that is a big difference that Western country has with respect to some more autocratic nation. In Western country, we still can decide which kind of study we want to do, which is not the case somewhere else.
That's very true. We have very little time left, and I do want to talk about ransomware because this is so important. What if your company is asked for a ransom? What are the directives from your government? So I think I will go for this one with first Monsieur Waterhouse. Est-ce que le Québec recommande à une compagnie de payer la rançon, de négocier la rançon? What do you do? Or would you recommend?
C'est toujours une question piégeante dans le sens qu'on veut toujours... Une compagnie qui devient victime de rançon logiciel veut évidemment retrouver la fonctionnalité la plus rapidement possible et évidemment l'accès à ces données. Il y a quelques années, mettons, il y a 6-7 ans, c'était facile de négocier d'une certaine façon avec des rançonneurs qui étaient des individus à la base du cybercrime commis. Donc, il pouvait y avoir des négociations de l'ordre demandé de millions de dollars et s'en sortir peut-être, ayant été témoin de certains cas, dans les dizaines de milliers de dollars. Aujourd'hui, ce sont des groupes de cybercriminels, comme on l'a dit tout à l'heure avec les collègues, industrialisés, donc formels, des grands conglomérats quasiment, et qui, en ce moment-là, ils n'ont aucune impunité. Donc, ils vont premièrement entrer dans l'entreprise, voler l'information et après coup, chiffrer, crypter l'environnement par lequel ils vont demander premièrement rançon pour déverrouiller l'environnement et après coup, demander une deuxième rançon pour, à ce moment-là, essayer de négocier, de ne pas diffuser l'information qui a été volée. Mais
ça n'a pas de fin.
Ça n'a pas de fin, mais soyons pas dupes. Les cybercriminels, eux, vont capitaliser sur l'information qui a été perçue et en même temps faire mal à la réputation de l'organisation en leur disant, bien, regardez, évidemment, c'est du chantage dans la négociation. Si vous ne nous payez pas X, on va laisser aller les données. Et on en voit à chaque semaine de plus en plus fréquent que ces éléments-là sont en ce moment-là partie prenante, c'est vivant. Alors, est-ce que payer rançon, ça va à ce moment-là garantir que vous allez retrouver les données et qu'elles ne se retrouveront pas sur le dark web ou ailleurs? La réponse, c'est non. Donc, il n'est jamais recommandé de payer rançon. Et oui, à ce moment-là, tenter à ce moment-là de faire une meilleure protection en amont d'un événement, sachant que ça peut
de déclarer.
Et déclarer, qu'est-ce que ça l'apporte? Surtout déclarer à l'échelon national, autant en Italie qu'au Canada ici, c'est de laisser savoir aux autorités que l'événement a lieu. Nous aussi, on demande toujours de le savoir pour être à mesure de quantifier et surtout vraiment vérifier est-ce que c'est un secteur en particulier ou un autre qui est affecté.
Monsieur Khoury, que conseille le Canada à quelqu'un qui se ferait comme ça demander une rançon?
Thanks. I don't wish it on anyone to be a victim of a ransomware campaign, but at the end of the day, it's a business decision for a company to decide to pay or not to pay a ransom. There is no federal statute that prohibits the payment of ransom. We don't recommend the payment of ransom, but at the end, I would say it's a business decision. But know that in paying a ransom, you are taking some risk. You are dealing with a criminal enterprise. You are fueling an underground economy that lives off that sort of payment of ransom. There is no guarantee that, one, they will honor that end of the deal, and two, that the key that they give you back is the key that will unlock the data. So there are all sorts of risks in paying a ransom. But I'll open just a small parenthesis. It's important also that when you are a victim of a ransom, that you reach out to us in Ottawa at the Cyber Center. Last year, we were only made aware of 304 ransomware incidents at the national level. It's a joke. I'm sure there's a lot more ransomware incidents than 304. Why is it that businesses are not reaching out to us? It's kind of it's like the caramel secret. I'm trying to understand what it is.
Could it be because they're afraid they're going to be told you didn't do
Yeah.
this, you didn't protect this, you didn't, your
So-
password was 123?
Our goal is to help the business get back up on its feet. It's not to name or shame. We are not a regulator. We are not a law enforcement agency. So in talking to us, you'll never see me on the news talking about an incident per se. We might talk about a campaign, but we will never name victims of a cyber incident. So I would encouraging you in order to build that trust, to Marie-Claude's earlier comment, it's events like that we develop those partnerships to get to know each other.
Yeah.
And in the event of an incident, please reach out to us and we'll see what we could do to assist you.
What does Italy recommend if somebody is
So
asked to ransom? Same
I-
thing or different?
Absolutely same thing. I underline, I subscribe each word that Sami said, especially that our agencies are not regulators and are not, no, in Italy actually we are regulator, but we are not law enforcement. So that's why it's very important that anyone that has a ransomware that gets through, so they contact us. First, because they can get advices from us from a technical point of view. Sometimes this can also help. And in any case, we can help in the mitigation activity. But I want to underline one aspect. So the international collaboration. I mean, when you think to a ransomware crew, it's a global thing. It's not, that me and you are in a room and we decide to attack together. No, there are, let's say, 10 or 15 persons spread around the world that coordinate each other, and each one has his own task inside the ransomware attack. And of course, the ransomware is not only the technical part, of doing the injection of the cryptolocker, but there is also the recruitment part of the crew, there is also the payment of the ransom, how they distribute the things, and in order to face the threat, we have to think in a multidimensional way, which is, the resilience part, which is the disruptions of their technical capacity, the disruption of their business model. So I think that the disruption of this crew will not pass through the technical defense that we can do. Of course, we have to rise at the maximum our level of defense, but it will pass much more through the disruption of their business model.
Can I
Oui,
just
oui,
very,
Monsieur
very
Khoury.
briefly, I'll add. Ransomware is a business out there, and it's run as a business. And they have an org chart, they have a CEO, they have a recruitment team, and so on. And it's important that we were both at the White House a couple of weeks ago at the Counter Ransomware Initiative with 34 other countries. So it is a multinational effort to combat ransomware. We are imposing a cost on these groups, but the way to identify those groups is to report the incident so that we can connect the dots.
Yeah.
And then behind the scene, we have tools at our disposal to impose a cost on them. They don't make the headlines, but nevertheless, we have made a difference.
5 minutes left, and I have the very, very important question of money, l'argent. It's a double question. You don't have to all answer both aspects of my question. You can choose whichever. 2 aspects. Why is it that I still have the impression that some businesses prefer to prioritize rentability versus security? That's one part of the money aspect. And second, does injecting millions and millions of dollars make a difference in cybersecurity?
I think that things are changing. This is my sentiment at the moment. Of course, one of the issues why we are in this situation is the fact that, during the evolution of the technology, we put much more emphasis on usability and on let's say, some cosmetic aspect of the software itself rather than on security. But of course, there cannot be digital transformation without an adequate level of security. I think that this, even if it let's say, very slowly, but is a message that is getting into the society. So I am quite positive for the future. I am sure that right now technology that will go into the market will be much more implemented with inside some more accurate security.
Monsieur Waterhouse?
C'est un fait, encore une fois, je reviens sur la prémisse de que tous et chacun, on doit travailler avec la technologie. Et on le voit aussi, durant les 22 dernières années, j'ai été témoin de l'évolution grandissante que, évidemment, la technologie a pris plus de place, mais aussi la conscientisation a aussi pris sa place. Et malheureusement, c'est avec des événements malheureux que beaucoup d'organisations prennent conscience de l'importance d'accorder plus d'argent, donc soit à la technologie à mettre en place, soit à la formation du personnel qui souvent est très déficiente. Et en même temps, bien, encore là, c'est de développer la collaboration comme on fait tous ici aujourd'hui. Je veux dire, quand on met à contribution les universités pour faire la formation du personnel, les entreprises pour être capables d'innover et de mettre en place et de développer des outils pour être capables d'en faire la contradiction des attaques, donc des menaces, bien, ça vient faire en sorte que les institutions s'en tirent beaucoup mieux et en revanche, la société s'en tire beaucoup mieux. Alors, c'est toujours une roue qui tourne et si jamais il y a un sous-investissement dans un aspect, l'autre va en souffrir nécessairement. Mais ce n'est pas une question d'argent fondamentalement. Ça revient à un changement de culture. Et comme on le disait, professeur Baldoni et Sami, on a à ce moment-là à faire cette éducation de base et ça ne coûte rien au début.
L'argent.
I think it's not the quantity of money that you invest, it's how the smart investments that people make. And there are some investments in cybersecurity that might not cost a lot of money in terms of educating our workforce and training them to spot phishing emails or to have strong passwords. This is not a costly endeavor. Sure, if you want to have backups and all these things, that costs a lot of money, but it's about putting the money, the smart investments in place. But I think Professor Baldoni mentioned it early, to emphasize the role of the board. This is a board responsibility. It's not just the IT person. It's not just the CIO. It's the whole board that has to take ownership of the cybersecurity agenda. It's starting from the CEO all the way down.
Déjà la fin. Alors, je vais demander à mes trois invités, I will ask my three guests to answer very briefly. Quel est le plus important conseil que vous avez envie de donner aux gens dans la salle ce matin et sur le web aussi, qui nous écoutent en ce moment? Un conseil très, très concret sur ce qu'ils doivent faire maintenant.
Multi-factor authentication on any account. Read very carefully, think before clicking. That's a very important point.
Think and click.
Yes, think and click. That is the algorithm that I was mentioning before.
Yes.
I think these are the two most important things that anyone has to do.
Very true. Monsieur Khoury.
I'll say strong passwords. I would add that to the list. But also, there's all sorts of advice and guidance on the Cyber Center website. So go there and check what's applicable to your community, whether you're a citizen, a small, medium business, or a large enterprise.
Conseil concret immédiat, Monsieur Waterhouse.
J'ai à dire en conclusion que la sécurité par l'obscurité n'est plus une réalité. C'était un concept de la guerre froide des années antérieures, mais aujourd'hui, plus qu'on en parle, plus qu'on partage qu'est-ce qui nous arrive, à ce moment-là, en commun, nous allons pouvoir trouver la solution et prévenir et s'arranger pour que le pire n'arrive pas et ne vienne pas nous submerger.
Et j'allais ajouter pour conclure aussi qu'on devrait avoir des unes de journaux là-dessus tous les jours, qu'on en parle tous les jours dans les journaux. Il va falloir que ça évolue de ce côté-là aussi. Alors, merci infiniment, professeur Baldoni, monsieur Khoury, monsieur Waterhouse. J'espère que vous ressortez de ce panel enrichi, dans le bon sens du terme, et plus renseigné sur les choses de base à faire et les choses un petit peu plus pointues. Et au fil de la journée et de tout ce congrès, de ce merveilleux congrès, vous allez en apprendre encore plus et de plus en plus précisément et pointu. C'était une introduction donc à la cybersécurité. Merci de votre attention. Bonne journée à tous.